The big one, Blackpool Pleasure Beach's legendary roller coaster. Blackpool Pleasure Beach's history maker. Blackpool Pleasure Beach's iconic roller coaster, which has created memories to last a lifetime for thrill seekers, roller coaster enthusiasts, its ride operatives, and many more people who have braved a ride on the UK's tallest roller coaster. In this special Pleasure Beach Experience feature, I will be exploring what makes the big one so popular by taking a trip down memory lane and hearing how the big one has touched the heart of thrill seekers, coaster enthusiasts, and its former ride operatives in the past 25 years.
I was out one day working, driving around, picked up a newspaper, and in there was the press release from Blackpool Pleasure Beach in terms of the big one. You know, the kind of the feature that I saw took me right back to Cedar Point. Magnum, you know, Magnum arriving at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Surely that can't be true.
Jeffrey Thompson was talking to me and he said that they were going to win the world record back for the highest roller coaster in the world. And I thought, where are you going to put this? The Pleasure Beach is already so ride heavy. Where are you going to put it? And then he showed me a model of it and said it's going to just be over the top of everything. And you sort of think at the time, yeah, really? Seeing will be believing. And then when you see the plans and how they were going to put it in, it was amazing. And I thought, this is something we're going to have to look forward to because we're going to show the Americans how to do it.
The UK was always kind of 7 years behind America in terms of what it was doing, in typical kind of ride, stature, height, speed. So, you know, Corkscrew, Alton Towers, you know, was kind of a standard ride. So for us, you know, something big coming along was you know, truly awesome and something that we were always looking forward to. And I guess the lead up to 1994 and the build up to it was a really special time.
I was lucky enough to be invited to one of the first foundation laying, and myself, Chris Greener, who at the time was the world's tallest man because it was the world's tallest coaster, and Linford Christie, the world's fastest man because it was at the time the world's fastest coaster. We were all there and we stood on the concrete platform, and of course they didn't have a clue what they were standing on, whereas I knew that was the point where the train would turn around up towards the Grand National end, if you know the ride layout. And I knew that in a few months' time, standing there, I'd be looking up at a train turning around and going back along the promenade, having seen the plans, knowing the exact layout. So I was getting very excited that this was really happening. And then, over time, visiting Blackpool, bear in mind I live in London, so I was travelling up quite a lot, 9 times in that duration. I saw lorries arriving, carrying single sections of track, piece by piece, as arriving on the Pleasure Beach, and were being put on the car park that was where the Big Blue is now. It wasn't there at the time, and there was just pieces of red track arriving on there, and you knew that eventually that was all going to be pieced together to make the biggest roller coaster in the world at the time. And so it was getting very exciting as piece by piece it came and was being put together piece by piece, and getting very exciting, waiting for that opening day.
The foundations themselves going in was just monumental because the foundations had to go into so many different places. Suddenly you realised the kind of complexity of the ride and how it had to fit in to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So, you know, all around the site, suddenly you would see foundations being driven into the ground, piling here, piling there, things covered up outside the Grand National, you know, but everywhere you walked, there was construction. It was just, it kind of blew your mind in terms of the size and the scale of the whole project. But I think, yet again, you know, being part of the construction, going to site, watching what was going on, being part of that legacy, didn't really hit home until the steel started to arrive on site. And I think, yet again, the sections were obviously fabricated and then were brought up to Blackpool Pleasure Beach and were arriving on low-loaded lorries. But the loads were absolutely humongous. They were just absolutely giant scale in terms of their size. And to see that yet again being lifted and moved into place over the Pleasure Beach was just breathtaking.
I remember quite clearly the supports for the turnaround section were in up by the entrance. towering over the rest of the park. It's far bigger than anything else that was anywhere near there.
This is one of the biggest projects I think the Northwest ever managed to pull off. Which, when you think what we actually did here in the 90s, that was the biggest roller coaster in the world. No one had done anything like this before, and we managed to build it in the Northwest, which is fantastic.
So when the track was complete, I had to do a photo shoot at the top. Jeffrey Thompson asked me to come up the top of the lift hill with him. They hadn't quite fitted all the barriers on the side by this time, so we walked up that lift hill. And at the time, health and safety weren't insisting on harnesses or hard hats or anything. We literally just walked up those steps to the very top. It was quite a windy day, and we got to the top, and the photographer, he wanted me to pretend I was riding a coaster, and he asked me if I could stand with my legs across the track and arms in the air, but the width is too much, and it's quite high up there, so that wasn't going to happen. But we did some pictures up there, and Jeffrey did a famous picture with a bowler hat on there at the top. It was great views, very windy, but we couldn't ride it because no trains. Then a short while later, trains arrived, and we were able to see the first train go. When they switched on that lift hill and you heard the motor for the first time, and then the train was pushed out full of sandbags, because couldn't have humans on it initially, and you hear that clickety clickety click as it's going up the lift hill, and your fingers crossed that it's going to make it all the way round, because if it stops in a dip, there's a lot of hard work there. It did. Wasn't as fast as it would become once it was open, but it did make it around the track. And then a few weeks later, once it had been signed off and the Pleasure Beach could then put humans on it, it was a chance to get on and ride it for the first time. Obviously, for the public, it was going to be their first time on a ride so high, but for myself, having been fortunate enough to ride rides like Magnum XL200 or Desperado, things like that, I knew what to expect height-wise. It was just the thrill of the fact it was in the UK, it was in Blackpool, it was on the promenade, and it was over so many other rides, adding to that thrill factor that you were going to get on it. And once you got to the top of that lift hill for the first time, admiring the view, of course it's Blackpool coastline, it's a fantastic view, it just took that right turn, plummeted down to the back of Coaster's Diner as it was, and you knew they had a fantastic coaster on their hands. It was the dips and the turnaround, and then the way it flies around the back of the Big Dipper and the steeplechase, and then through the tunnel before coming back up into the breaks. It was just fantastic, and couldn't wait for opening day. I really wanted the public to see this, and we were going to be putting Blackpool on the coaster map as once again the best place in the world to ride coasters.
So in terms of the ride opening, it was getting obviously closer and closer to the opening day. More and more testing was being done, more and more phone calls were being made. Is it ready to ride? When's it opening? And then to have a date that the ride was opening to the public, yet again, brought great anticipation, great excitement. And I think not just really for me, it was for everybody. And I think, the opening of the big one was a big milestone in roller coaster, within the UK, within Europe. And I think the coverage of that ride back then was massive. Everybody that I knew, everybody that I spoke to, knew about the big one being built at Blackpool Pleasure Beach.
Someone said the Pepsi Max, they didn't mean a can of pop, they meant that thing up there.
People wanting to go up and ride it and talking about it, and the buzz through people that I knew was really, really exciting. So to be at the leading edge of that, and to be obviously very much involved in the construction in the project, was very, very exciting. And so to finally have that day in terms of this is the opening day was fantastic, and it was very much a carnival, massive excitement, and and I always say that there are very few rides in the world that when you look at it and you look at the big one from the promenade of Blackpool, it looks absolutely stunning. I was up there recently, and I kind of think of the Pleasure Beach without the big one standing so massively above it. If you took the big one away, how would it look, and how would you feel about the Pleasure Beach today? There's so much history there.
I was looking at a picture just the other day, taken up on the overpass in the early 70s, and this area's just green. There's just nothing here. It's weird because there's no steeplechase, no avalanche, no big one. There is nothing. I cannot picture Blackpool without the big one. I cannot picture Blackpool Seafront without the big one on it. It would just look weird now because it's a fixture.
The big one was always on the news, and always everybody was talking about it. And local places near me were arranging trips up to Blackpool just to ride the big one. You know, the local nightclub organised a coach to go up. You know, with everybody. I think they were obviously the DJ was DJing through till 2 a.m. in the morning, and they were jumping on the coach after the club, and then going up to the Pleasure Beach for the following morning on a Sunday after a few beers. But it was that kind of an atmosphere. It was really, really exciting. So around that time of when it first opened, there was such a big buzz about it, and it was fantastic to be part of it. Riding the lift hill all the way to the top. And it's like, you know, when are we going to get to the top? When are we going to get to the top? Are we at the top yet? It was just never ending in some respects. But the one part of the ride that really blew me away was always the first drop. I think the first drop on the big one is one of my most favourite first drops on any coaster in the planet. There are a few others that most certainly do take your breath away, but I always thought with the big one that, especially on the back seat, overall, when I remember when I first rode it, going up the lift hill, that you just couldn't see the front of the car at all. And by the time you were actually being pulled over the top, you still couldn't see the front of the car because it was such a sheer drop and a twist to it. And you were up at your seat, and then obviously you were thrown sort of kind of forward a bit, and then you were taken down this massive drop that it really kind of took your breath away.
So my first memories of going on the big one would have been October half term 1994, and Mum and Dad took me to Blackpool. I was there with my aunt and my cousin, went on the big one. It was obviously the ride to be going on at Blackpool in 1994, and I remember going up to the top of the lift hill and could just see everywhere. I remember looking towards Liverpool and you could see the lights, and towards the Lake District and you could see all the lights up the coast. So it must have been in the dark, you know, it must have been one of the late night openings, and that first drop was just epic. So before they reprofiled that track, it was just spot on. It was so good.
The reprofiling of the ride was a big question in my mind of how it would affect the ride in terms of the first drop on, you know, when it first opened being absolutely fantastic. But to take a little bit of the steepness out of it and to give it a little bit more of a turn, I thought in some respects kind of helped it. I think it made it a little bit more smoother, you know. But I think the wow factor of the first drop, and I think with anything, when you first ride a roller coaster, it's always great to be there on the inauguration and to get it done before anything is changed to the right, was absolutely fantastic. But even today, the first drop of the big one really stands up against a lot of the first drops of the coasters that are out around the world today. And still in my mind, it's still one hell of a backseat ride over that first drop. I think it takes everybody's breath away, whether it was for the first profile or for the second profile. But it is important that any park, in some respects, you know, they have to make, you know, A, the ride safe, and B, obviously make sure that the maintenance of the ride is absolutely key to the future of the ride.
The insight from both Paul Burton and Andy Hine goes a long way to showing me how incredibly exciting the lead up to the big one's official opening day was for coaster enthusiasts throughout the world. Not only was it the Roller Coaster Club of Great Britain and the European Coaster Club that were excited, the American Coaster Enthusiasts Coaster Club were planning out trips to the UK for their members to come over and ride the world's tallest roller coaster at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. A first day riders club was also formed, known as the 235 Club. 1,000 members paid £18 each to guarantee a ride on the big one's first day, the 28th of May 1994. The 235 Club was formed by the Pleasure Beach, but eventually would become the official supporters club of Blackpool Pleasure Beach, with an elected chairman to oversee the running of the club. The interest in the big one went far beyond that of roller coaster enthusiasts. over 10,000 advance tickets were purchased to ride the big one, and over 200,000 people visited Blackpool Pleasure Beach during the first 3 days that the big one was open.
I was one of the three train generation. I started learning three trains in the 98 season and then went all the way through to the end of the 2000s. Three trains is a very special sort of type of operation of the ride. It's such a difference from running two, because you've literally got to run the ride at full tilt constantly. We were open midnight regularly through the season. I think the longest day I had was 7:30 start, which was not unusual. 2 hour safety checks in the morning. We opened at 9:30 on three trains. We closed on three trains, and I went round on the last staff shot, the last staff ride of the night, at 1:45 the following morning. But at that time in the morning, with the top deck lights off, the park lights off, complete pitch black, the illuminations off, fantastic. It really was fantastic. But running three trains, you've literally got to have your wits about you. Because two trains, you've got that sort of gap in between. Your two train dispatch point is your return bend. So your three train dispatch point is your bottom of your first drop. So as the train comes into the station, the train is set, you've got 1 minute and 4 seconds to unload, reload, check the bars, deal with bags, all of that sort of stuff, people run up the exit ramp, all that sort of caper, and you've got to get that train out within 50 seconds, because otherwise the train behind it is going to stop in the ready brake. And as soon as you hear that train thunder through into the safety brake, you know you've literally got to have that train ready to go, because as soon as you've got the clearance from the ride console, it's got to go. But back then, they knew how much revenue this ride could earn. At 420 a ride, every seat was 420 of revenue.
Yeah.
If they saw empty seats on three trains, and bear in mind we were dispatching trains every 50 seconds for about 13 hours, sometimes more. If they saw empty seats going around the train, you would get a phone call. No doubt about it, you would get a phone call from the park office. Keith Allen would like to know why there's empty seats going around the train. And bearing in mind, just to literally reload that train in 35, 40 seconds, the 50 seconds would start when the nose cone came into the station and would end when the nose cone went out. It wasn't a static train, so you're literally looking at a 35, 40 second turnaround with a stationary train in the station constantly, because that's the only way that the ride would continue just to circulate.
Yeah.
If there was any stacking of trains, I'd see Keith, I'd turn around from the console, I'd see Keith on the bridge with this sort of radio like that, and he would just literally look up and go. When you're trying to run three trains in the wind, you still don't want it to slow down. The train itself will slow down, but you don't want it to really affect the dispatch times. So going back to sort of wind operation, we used to run this thing. I mean, the limits of what they can run on west, as you know, the west and northwest weren't affected. The limits you can run it on, I think west was 40 to 50 maximum, and these are limits that were put in 94, 95.
Yeah.
We sort of pushed those limits to the max. I mean, I remember looking at trains on the two hills, Star Hill, and the one that's just before it, and they would almost stop.
Yeah.
And sat on the console with another two trains whizzing around the track, 800 people in the queue. Your heart would sink.
First time I attempted to ride it was 97, and yes, I bottled it. I didn't bottle it, I was only a kid then, I would have been like 9 or 10. Convinced I was going to ride it, but never actually seen the thing. I knew it was big, I knew the hype about it, I knew it was the tallest roller coaster in the world and all this. But it's only when I stood under it, I was convinced all the way down the motorway, all the way down the F55, I'm going on it. I just stood under it and went, I'm not going on that.
My first memories of the big one were probably when I was a really young kid. I came here with my family. I took one look at how big the thing was and just thought, no, not doing it, not going on it. It just terrified me. So my first memories of the Pepsi Max big one, or the big one, was that it was just too big for me. I wasn't a big fan of coasters at the time. Actually, I was terrified of the coasters, you know, little tiny kids creds, that was okay for me, but I couldn't go on anything big.
Growing up in the northwest, grew up in St Helens, so less than an hour down the road, and I just remember I was 8 when in fact I would have turned 8 the summer that the big one opened, and I just remember seeing it on the news, the fact that the world's tallest roller coaster was opening just down the road in Blackpool, which is really like odd concept to me as a nearly 8-year-old, but really cool at the same time. I don't think I actually rode it until about probably 98, 99, something like that, when I was old enough and I got over my little childhood fear of roller coasters. But yeah, so probably 98, 99 when I first rode it, and like that feeling going up the lift hill of what am I doing here? Sort of going up like, this is a lot higher than it looks from down there on the ground. Once I'd done it once, I wanted to keep going round and round, keep going back on it again. Then it's just kind of got the bug from it. It's still one of my favourite coasters in the country to this day.
E-stops, you'd race the guys to get the trains out, and you just get into the rhythm of doing it, and you'd be in the rhythm, and all of a sudden you'd hear the chain going up in the background, and all of a sudden all your lights would just go off.
Yeah.
Big one console, you've got all the lights on the blocks where the trains are, the air pressure lights, all that sort of stuff, and the D-back sort of thing to your left. It's that moment when it just goes quiet. Even with 600 hundreds of people in the station, you can hear the silence is deafening from that console. All the lights are blank, just that red light, the light of doom as you sort of look at it. Because the console itself, some people might not know, it's how you would imagine an aerodynamics console to be. Lots of chunky buttons, lots of big block lights and all the rest of it. There's no sort of LED screens on the console itself. Big sort of chunky key to turn it on. But once the e-stop kicks in on 3 trains, that's when you've literally got to be in the zone straight away. Because the pressure back then, in the late 90s, they knew, Keith and JR knew, and all the assistant operations managers knew, 2 minutes maximum before the train started moving on that.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do would be assign people to the individual block brakes because they have to be manually pulled. We'd double up if there was a train on one of the block brakes, for example, the B block brake next to the big blue. 2 people to the pull up if there was a train over halfway up, because you'd have to send someone to talk to the train as well. People out to the ready and the safety brake from the side of the road, just going in there. And that would all have to happen within 2 minutes. If you had one of the hangers over the top, which because of the nature of the 3-train ride, as it came into the safety brake, the train would be going over the top. 2 minutes, and you'd literally 420 steps. You'd have to race up them steps. Wheel checks back in those days, because we were open 9:30 till midnight, 1 o'clock. Wheel check. When you see the engineers coming down across the bridge, you sort of go, oh no. Because the 3-train wheel check, you've got to have obviously the train over the pit.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure the trains are in a situation where you can bring that train slowly into the station. So on 3 trains, you'd run the first train onto the pull-up, you'd have the next train coming into the closed ready brake, and you'd have the other train circulating around the track. So you get the train into the ready brake, you'd have an operator talk to the people at the bottom of the pull-up, and that one would run into the safety brake whilst they're checking it.
Yeah.
And you'd be sort of trying to manage all of that, closing the right brakes and launching the trains. Whilst you've got literally an engineer's hands under the 3rd train, and they're sort of under pressure as well to sort of move it down, and you're trying to restart pull-ups and close safety brakes. It was intense.
My first ride on a big one was 7th of May 2004. It was a £10 wow weekend at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The Pleasure Beach was absolutely heaving. The big one was on 2 trains, but I didn't ride it until the end of that day, and I'd not really been keen on riding the big one for years because it was something that I was nervous about, anxious about. I'd seen my dad going on it when I was a child, and I just didn't really fancy it. It was just too tall. It's just something I just did not want to do. I wasn't really a coaster fan at that time. I was a bit anxious about riding any roller coaster. But that day, 7th of March 2004, that changed my life really, because I I came here with my friends to the Pleasure Beach, and we just did each coaster. I'd already been on the Grand National, I'd been on roller coaster, but I'd never been on like Big Dipper, I'd never been on Avalanche, I'd not been on the Revolution, I'd not been on the big one, I'd not been on any of those rides. So to come here that day, we literally ticked off every ride as we went, and I remember it getting to about 6, 7 o'clock, and it was getting to the point where we were having to get our train back to Crewe. And we'd not been on the big one, but all day, sort of quietly, to myself, I'd been thinking, is it really that much worse than the Big Dipper? Is it really that much worse than the Grand National? Surely it's just like those rides, but just taller. So it got to the point where we'd been on all the coasters, except for the Revolution and the big one. And I remember us going on the Whip, it was dark, and I remember all day, I'd been thinking about going on the big one for that first time. And I remember being sat on the Whip, I just was not interested about what was going on the Whip. I remember just thinking, I'm going on the big one for the first time, and I don't care if my 2 friends with me are going on it, I am going on it for the first time. And I remember us, after the Whip, my friend also said to me, one of my friends said to me, right, are we going on the big one or what? We've got to go home soon. And I was like, yeah, I'm up for it. And I just remember us getting to the entrance, I'm sure you'll remember it if you rode it in the old days. You used to have the old cattle pen outside the entrance of the ride, and then there was a little turnstile. I remember pushing the turnstile and entering the main queue line and thinking, this is it, I'm finally going to go on the big one for the first time. And because it was such a significant day at the Pleasure Beach for me, it's something that I remember like it was yesterday, even though it was 15 years ago now. It's just something that's always stuck with me. And the queue for the big one was just past the Pepsi cans, so it was not in the first extension, it was sort of in the next one just before the ramp up. And I remember that me and my friend, because there was 2 friends with me, but one of my friends had said absolutely no chance was he going on the big one. But the 2 of us that did it, we made an agreement that in the queue we just wouldn't talk about the big one at all, because we were both nervous, we were both anxious, and we just said we're not even going to mention it, we're going to watch it as it goes round, but we're not even going to talk about it. And eventually that queue just went like that, it just went so quick. It was on 2 trains, the queue was going so quickly. And then I remember we got to the air gates and thinking, right, this really is it. It really is it. And I remember when the air gates opening just thinking, right, there's no backing out now, you've got to do it. You're here, you've got to do it. And it's just something that has always stuck with me, that first ride on the big one. And now it's time to experience vertical reality. I just remember hearing that as we left the station for that first ride on the big one. And going up the lift hill in the dark with the chaser lights on, the train lights on, all of Blackpool Pleasure Beach lit up beneath us, all of the promenade lit up. And I just remember going up the lift hill and thinking, this is weird, I'm not even scared, I'm not even nervous, I'm just looking forward to this ride. And I think we sat somewhere in the second carriage, sort of middle, I think it was the second row in the second carriage. I seem to remember it being that one. I can't remember precisely where we sat on that first ride, but I just remember going over that first drop and just thinking, wow, this ride is incredible. Like I say, all of Blackpool Pleasure Beach was lit up, the first drop was lit up, and the train lights lit up that first drop even more, and it was almost like time stood still as we took the right turn and down the drop. I just remember that first drop on the first ride on the big one, and as soon as that happened I just knew this is for me. I think I'm a roller coaster enthusiast, I love this roller coaster and I just want more. And I remember, unfortunately, we couldn't go on it again because it was literally the last ride we could do before we had to get a train back home. But I remember as soon as we got back to Crewe I was like, right, I need to go Pleasure Beach again, I need to go on the big one again. And from there I have just become probably one of its biggest fans ever.
Favourite memories would be, I loved it when it was on 3 trains. I loved running it in the wind. I loved at night when, because I know when most people know, downstairs, because of the long hours we used to do, there's a fully equipped bathroom with shower and toilets downstairs, and we used to get sort of 2.5-hour breaks spread through the day. That's literally how long we were doing it. But my favourite memories were literally after 14 hours coming off the console and just literally just grabbing a brush sometimes and just having a wander outside, just thinking in my head. And seeing the park so busy, I mean, like I said before, you'd easily have 20,000 to 25,000 people here at 11 o'clock at night. particularly in the illuminations. You'd get a lull at tea time like you do now. You'd get that at 8 o'clock and everyone would go and see fireworks wherever. And then 9:30, it would be just like they'd just opened the gates again.
Yeah.
Everyone would just pile back in. And I've been here when we've closed on 3 trains, we've not even bothered putting them away. We've just got the sheets out, parked the other 2 outside, and then straight open on 3 trains the next day. But at night time, I always remember the chaser lights on the pull-up, and the way that it looked with the top decks is such a gorgeous ride, it really is. I mean, obviously they've won awards for how it's been lit up. But I always loved the chaser lights on the pull-up. I miss the LED strips on the side of the trains, even though they're a pain in the backside, because the connect, they never really work. You get about 2 days a season where they would completely work or whole charge. But it's like Icon's trains are now. The big one trains used to look like that at night.
Yeah.
And when the top decks were off on the last rides of the night, you'd see it, just these red LED lights just sailing through the park, and it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I remember the early 2000s, probably about 2001, 2002, so I would have been about 15, 16. We had a big family gathering here with all my cousins, aunties and uncles and stuff, and me and my cousin persuaded my auntie to go on the big one, and she'd never been on a roller coaster before. We still talk about it every time we see her to this day, because she was absolutely terrified and cursing us for the rest of the day.
I think my best memories of it would be in the modern era, the ERTs. I love the ERTs, we've done as a club, we've done loads of them. I've been lucky enough to do a couple of other specialist bits as well, obviously walk the big one. It was a great experience to walk up there. Filming I did with Blue Peter that time, I really enjoyed that, that was a great laugh. 3 hours, same seat, 17 rides, free ERT, great.
This year has been quite interesting for us because as parents we've managed to get Peter to 132.
So Peter's finally managed to get to the height where he's able to go on the big one after bugging us for years about wanting to go on this ride. He's finally managed to get on it himself, and he was insistent that he was going to go in the back. So he took back row big one and absolutely loved it.
My favourite memory of the big one here at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the first time I rode the big one in 2008, October 2008, it was raining, it was very windy, they'd only just got it open. I first rode that with my dad. Oh my gosh, like we crawled around the turnaround, and I just remember thinking we were going to stop. Like, I was so scared. I was 11 at the time, the first time I did it, and it was honestly the scariest thing I've ever done. But yeah, that was the first time I rode it. That was the first big roller coaster I ever rode with my dad, and sadly also the last. September 2011, that was the last coaster I ever rode with my dad before he passed away. Bit sad, but yeah, memories last forever.
The first late night riding this year, and we had the best ride on it in the dark. We were on the fast train, it flew around the track. Everyone coming off just absolutely so happy with it. So yeah, very recent memory, late night riding this year.
My favourite memory is going to sound very familiar to some people, but it was late night riding this year when we got on a nighttime ride on the fast train with no wind, and it was absolutely flying around the track. You got to the brake run, it flew through the brake run. On the helix, it was pulling G's on the helix, which I've never actually experienced before. It was incredible.
It's like the big one. I met everyone from the big one at Pleasure Beach, because when I saw the big one I was like around 6-5 years old. It drew me to come to the park, and I've met all my friends and I've met all the people, and that's why it's always going to remain my favourite ride. As much as I love Icon, but big one just has that connection that not many rides do. So I love it a lot.
25-year-old, still running like a dream. Opened in the same year as a couple of other rides, but we won't mention them. They're talking about the big one. You can't, words can't describe its legacy. It's just unbelievable coaster. First of its kind in Europe.
It's just an absolutely legend of a coaster.
It was a kind of a step forward for coasters in the UK, I think. I think without the big one being here, I don't think we would have the same landscape of roller coasters in the UK that we do now. For me, it was a bit of a game changer and upped people's interest in what coasters could be.
The big one will always have a big part to play in the Pleasure Beach, in the way in which it looks, the way in which it feels, the way in which you ride, and that will then be its legacy forever.
It's still here 25 years later, thrilling people. It still has lines, people are queuing to ride it all the time, and it still runs as good as it always did. And who knows, will it be there in another 25 years? Time will tell.